As Bailey mentioned, I'm the university recruiting manager for Uber. So what that means is my team is a bunch of great dedicated professionals that like to interact with college students all over the country, and they find talent for all the jobs that we have in US and Canada. Uber is a global team. If anybody's been fortunate, likely pre-pandemic, to take an Uber in another country, that's certainly available to them. I have colleagues in India and in Amsterdam. I've not ridden Uber in those countries, but I hear in Amsterdam, the service is really good. So if you get a chance to ride a Uber in Amsterdam, please do so. And so we find talent for our jobs in both tech and non-tech. So I do see there's a lot of computer science majors here today, but definitely if you're a business student, we have roles for you too. So, but software engineering is definitely like the mainstay of, my son took my phone that has my Uber app on it, but definitely we need a lot of tech talent to run our business, and certainly the business skills to be able to run our products and services efficiently. So in business, we may be hiring students from various business disciplines like accounting and finance, but also we have opened up some marketing, and we'll be opening up some sales roles too. And prior to that, I actually had very similar jobs here to Deb and Bailey, and I did work in career services at Stanford and San Jose State. So I've been on both sides. So happy to be here today.
Thanks, Espie. So we're going to go ahead and I could kick it off with a question. And if you all want to start thinking of questions you might have and putting those in the chat, that would be great. And since this is some more tailored to interviewing with large companies and getting your feedback and tips on that, Espie, I think my first question, which a lot of students are very worried about and really wanting to see how they can best excel on this topic, is what would you consider to be some tips for an effective Zoom interview? What are some things that you look for? I know this is, it's always been around, but it's very prevalent now during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much really the only way to interview, right? I mean, there may be some instances in some pockets of the country where that it can happen in person, but definitely for the world that I live in the tech space, I mean, none of us at Uber are actually in the office, where we've all been working remotely for months, and our summer interns this year completely went remote. So that was definitely a new challenge that was thrown at us, but we were definitely lucky that we could pivot our business and be fortunate that we can work from home in different places, at the convenience of just having the laptop there. So I would say, honestly, my advice wouldn't be too much different for how I would prepare a student to going to any interview. I will say that I do think there is a relaxed component, like you had mentioned. There is a tiny human, right? So I do think that there has been a little bit of a shift in like knowing that it's okay, because we're all in this together. If your cat or dog walks into the frame, I mean, or your baby, if your baby started walking, then I would be like, oh my gosh, that's a miracle, because she's only 7 months, but certainly that would be a spectacle. So I do think there is a little bit less of a formality that has transformed in terms of like being able to present yourself. But I think the spirit of being your authentic self has always been there. So I would say, in terms of preparing for a Zoom interview, do the things that Deb and Bailey would probably tell you to do. That would mean like understand the role that you're applying for, think of why you would be the best candidate for that role. So know what you would bring to that role, things from your coursework, projects that you've studied, like specific skills that you are versatile in, all those things, you be able to communicate those. Also, the technical difficulties do happen. and how you kind of handle that with grace. So just actually yesterday, we're in our final phases of interviewing for our computer science internship. And I know yesterday there was a student that one of the engineers was interviewing, and I said, oh, like the engineer like slacked me and said, I don't know what happened to the student. Like, I'm not, he's not showing up to the interview. And then it turned out that the student was having technical difficulties. And yesterday, like, was just a bad day because we have colleagues in Dallas, so a lot of people were out of power in Texas, but and I'm not sure where this student was. I don't think he was there, but at any rate, technical difficulties are bound to happen. And so I was curious. So I asked the engineer, like, oh, okay, how was the student when you finally like talked to him? Was he like cool about everything? I was just curious to see kind of how he handled that, because that could potentially be a stressor if a student, was having technical difficulties. And so he said he handled it with grace, and that he apologized, and that they just made plans to reschedule for a time where he would have hopefully potentially better internet access. So a lot of these things are unplanned. So definitely like check out how your lighting is going to be, how you appear, on the screen. But at the same time, we can't anticipate for all these things that could happen. So maybe just taking a bit of a pause. And I know it's harder definitely when you're a student that you haven't had as many of these experiences. But, at the end of the day, I think we are going to be looking at how, the people we hire might be reacting to stressful situations. So, definitely, think about how you can handle these unplanned things with confidence and grace. So, I think like do prepare, but just know that in the moment, you may be having to respond to things out of your control. I don't know if that was 5 things, but
That
I
was
hope
perfect.
that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And I totally understand the idea of, allowing for grace. Sometimes you have no idea what's going to happen, especially in this kind of time that we're in. But understanding that, what you can control is you can try your best to do some like dry runs. Hopefully you can make sure your computer doesn't need any updates, right then.
Mm-hmm.
So, making sure some of that is going on. Because we've all seen that before. We're like, you have to update right now. So,
Right.
yeah. So, but kind of, having, do your checkups that way. But for those of you who've jumped on, is there anybody that might have any questions? Do please put that in the chat and we can read. Um, Okay, we do have a question here. So, first of all, they want to say thank you for taking the time to share your insights with us. My question was regarding the soft skills. So we can showcase the technical skills through our projects and all, but how would we showcase soft skills like hard work, collaboration throughout our resume?
Yeah, good question. And I think, this collaboration and teamwork soft skills is vital to any role, but I know definitely in the technical space, they are looking for that, right? So it's not all about like, how to use all the programming languages, but how would you work with your team to like come up with the solution, right? And just how you're coming to that. So I would say, if you're involved in any projects or any organizations where you are interacting with other classmates or leaders, if you're a leader, that would be a way to definitely showcase that for sure. So I think listing any of the things that you're doing that may not necessarily be technical will help you showcase those soft skills, and being able to maybe explain, like, if it comes up in a interview question. Tell me about a time you demonstrated teamwork or collaboration. Then you would certainly have, hopefully you would have examples from projects, classwork, maybe any part-time jobs you have. Your skills can really come from anywhere. So they may be related to things that you've been working on. at school, or they might be, you know, elsewhere, like outside. Maybe you've been involved in your community, and that could definitely be like a significant and relevant example to bring up.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, and always, always to Espie's point, demonstrating those skills. Don't leave anybody to go, I think I believe you, you know, demonstrate, show us how. So that is something that we also would definitely kind of ditto. Let's see, we have another question here. It says, how can we network with companies like Uber in a time where we can't meet in person at events like we used to?
Well, I mean, I think there's many companies like Uber and many other, you know, tech companies, non-tech companies, companies of various industries, size and scale. You know, we are like you, like we're hurting that we can't be in person, right? So like my team definitely like joined university recruiting because they like going out to campus. They like meeting students, like they like all that travel. So it's definitely like the allure of the work. So everything we've had to do this year, you know, has been in a virtual space. So there's definitely like lots of companies that are doing their own events virtually, or they're participating because they have a relationship with the school. So they definitely do exist. And I know like earlier in the year, Deb Bailey and myself are part of an organization called Mountain Pacific Association of Colleges and Employers. And earlier in the season, there was a basically a road trip that was managed by multiple. It was without going into details, but Deb and Bailey, it was like a multiple ACE road trip. And there was many companies that basically participated, and they were able to provide like virtual tours and info sessions of their companies. And this was like open to all our member schools. So if you guys didn't get to participate, I apologize, but there are opportunities like that that exist. And if those aren't clear to you, definitely like, you know, check in with your lovely folks here at the career centers, because they may be able to let you know of maybe some events that you're not aware of. But I do know that, you know, we have to definitely try harder to make sure that we are connecting with students, because there's also a lot going on too. So it's easy to tune it out, right? I mean, we definitely, like going into the season, there was a fear that students would get bombarded with like virtual event after virtual event. So I don't know if that's kind of the sense that any of you students are experiencing. If you need help kind of sorting through all that, again, maybe that's some guidance that, you know, your lovely team here can provide you with. But they are there. There are definitely opportunities to network, but I think it's just a little bit harder because the networking is like this, right? And so you do have to kind of go out of your comfort zone. Like, you know, maybe Alvaro is going to ask me a question. That doesn't mean you should. I didn't want to put you on the spot again, but you have to, like, maybe it's a little bit easier in the in-person space to go, hey, Espie, it's nice to meet you, where you can kind of like come up to me or my team at a booth, where here we're in the virtual space. And there's a little bit of a different of a muscle to use to, like, maybe, you know, have the onus to ask me or somebody else a question. And some of the events are huge, so you may not have the opportunity. So it's definitely a little bit more challenging.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I totally agree. It definitely uses, I like how you said that, a different muscle to kind of get
Mm-hmm.
speaking to people virtually rather than you get the nerve up to go up to a
Right.
table or booth. Speaking on or continuing on the aspect of networking, we do have a question at a form of networking. So, how important is LinkedIn to the job search, and how do you use it to source candidates? So, moving towards the LinkedIn piece.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for us at Uber, we have so many applicants because students know our brand. They've likely taken an Uber or they've driven for Uber, right? We definitely get a lot of students that apply that have been what we call partners. And so, we don't have a problem of people going, I've never heard of Uber, but certainly with other companies, they've not heard of those companies that they want to hire college students. And so they do have to maybe be a little bit more proactive and go to LinkedIn to look for candidates. My team honestly really doesn't go to LinkedIn. We get, I wouldn't be surprised if many of you have already gone to our website to apply for jobs in the past. So it's just kind of a given to look. But I do know other companies, look for candidates on LinkedIn. They might be putting in terms like certain majors and skills that students have there. So it's definitely worth it to have a complete profile there. I will say how my team uses it. And just a caveat, I manage recruiters, so I'm not actually the one typically looking at applications, but my team does. They will get like pinged maybe on LinkedIn, and then the recruiter on my team that does a lot of the business roles, like he told me, he's like, yeah, I don't go there to source candidates, but once in a while a student will ping me that I've applied for a role, and then I'll go ahead and take a look at their resume to make sure it's in our system, and I'll see if this is one that I should be looking a more thorough look at. So that can work, but in terms of, are we like actually actively looking for candidates on LinkedIn? Like, not my team specifically, but other companies do also use both strategies.
Thank you. Let's see. Does anybody, just a reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat.
But definitely for networking, I would use it, in terms of being a savvy job seeker, networker. I mean, if you want to connect with people at any particular company to learn, if you have alumni, I don't know how strong your alumni base is, but I think that's definitely one of the best strategies, is to reach out to alumni that maybe work in roles or jobs that you're interested in for information, and then you can become a more informed job seeker and potentially learn about opportunities that you haven't thought about because they might bring those to your attention. So I'd say my career counselor had always cites that as the number one best use of LinkedIn.
I also would agree with that. And then moving towards characteristics and how do we stand out, Espie? What are a couple ways or characteristics of candidates who stand out to you? And then what are a couple characteristics or behaviors that totally turn you off with a candidate?
Yeah, I mean, I will say like a clean resume, like make it simple. You definitely don't need to make it fancy, but things just need to be obvious. Like, it's amazing, like how actually I often will like want to just know what school and what major you are and when you're graduating. That's kind of like number one. And you'd be surprised that like a lot of students like have that buried for whatever reason. And it's not like I'm only looking for Stanford or something, right? I mean, certainly Stanford's got a good engineering program, but I mean, that's not why I'm looking. I need to know that you're in college, and I need to know you're a certain major, because that's often the basic qualifications. And you also need to be a student, because if you've already graduated, I know a lot of alumni end up trying to apply for our jobs if they're not qualified. So number one, typically the basic qualifications for any jobs in university is that you have a particular degree program that you're in. And for an internship per se, you need to have one term of school left. So for you guys on a semester system, you have to have one more term left at the end of the internship. So you need to be going back. So you could be a graduating senior and just have one semester left to do that summer internship. And so many people don't meet those basic qualifications, and it actually wastes our time to like have a lot of people that aren't qualified. And that actually takes away time from maybe we could be looking through more qualified applicants, but we miss them because unfortunately you'd think maybe our systems are a little bit more sophisticated. They should be. I think we've kind of just recently like launched a new version of our applicant tracking system that collects all the resumes. So help us get to those right candidates. So, but honestly, don't waste your time if you're thinking like, oh, I'm just going to apply even though I don't make the basic qualifications. We have to, like in the United States, many of the companies have to be compliant with government regulations. And so we have to make sure that we treat all applicants fairly and to standards. And so we can't like let somebody through the process if they're not meeting the qualifications. So you may think, oh, I just graduated, so I should just apply because maybe they'll give me a shot. Well, actually, we can't do that. So I would say number one, like make your resume clear, legible. We are looking for your degree. We're looking for your graduation date. Typically for an undergrad student, one page should do it. So hopefully you guys have resources there to provide your students to like just really get down that significant and salient information down to your resume. Because yeah, if you have like 2 pages, the only time really, and again, like my 15 years of being a career counselor, where I felt like it warranted going beyond a second page, a first page, is if you were a PhD student. Because then it was more academic, you typically have more experiences. If you're going for an academic job in academia, they expect you to like tuck volumes, but definitely like, we're just quickly trying to look for the qualifications that, we need for the job, and that's best accomplished in one page. Other things to help you stand out would be do list those experiences that do bring the soft skills. I think those would help you stand out beyond just showcasing your technical skills. And then on the flip side, if you're more of a liberal arts major and you have done some technical things, like bring those out too. I think it's nice to show the breadth and complexities of what you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you. And then to your point on the resume and like really condensing it down to what, all the most important things, I just want to say to our students, like we tell you all the time, but please, if you are worried about getting all that important stuff onto one page, it would be amazing. And you'd be amazed to see how much Deb and I can help you get on one page. So do use your resources. We are here. So again, career services, we'd be happy to help you. And then
for a grad student, sorry, Bailey.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
It said specifically for a grad student.
Mhm.
And if you're a master's student, I think you can definitely get it on to one page as well. Again, I think it's really like if you're more on the academic side, research focused, PhD, but for master's level, I don't think 2 pages is necessary.
And then Espie, tell me your thoughts on this. Sometimes I find that employers don't even flip the page. They're like, I saw everything I needed to see
honestly,
here.
I haven't seen a 2-page resume since I worked at Uber.
Okay. That's good to know. A great tip for our students.
And no cover letters. Don't waste your time, at least for us.
Okay.
Because nobody's going to read it. When I saw one, I was like, oh, a cover letter.
Okay, very good, very good. Hey, good.
There might be questions. They might have screening questions where maybe some of those things would you would want to write in a cover letter would be able to be showcased.
There, okay.
Yeah.
And then kind of going off the lines of, continuing to stand out, what kind of advice would you give for students and how to stand out to employers given the challenges with COVID?
I guess there's twofold, right? So that's how to stand out to like get looked at, right? Mm-hmm. And then how to stand out once you're already being like considered, right? So like a couple of things. And I feel like the harder thing is to like, please look at me first, right? And then like once like you're kind of under like the watch of a recruiter, then wow, I'm in, and then how to manage that. I think both are equally important because you can certainly blow both. You can certainly excel in both. So I think, like, honestly, it is a hard job market. We've seen, like, companies like not be able to hire as many employees, like, and that goes like across the board, right? Experienced as well as early talent. Certain industries like hit harder. I'm fortunate to say that, while our business took an impact, like, I haven't been in it Uber like in a year myself, but Uber Eats has really been able to expand, and so that is growing. And we recently acquired a company, Postmates, so that's just that is like, we're taking that to the highest advantage, and we're seeing that growth in that part of the business, which is great. So I guess my thought is, I'm fortunate that we've been able to hire, about as much, if not a little bit more than what we did last year. But at the same time, it really is different for a lot of the companies that are hiring right now. So I would say, definitely be open to applying to as many different opportunities as you feel like you're interested in, because I think this is one way to that gets you noticed. That's not necessarily a good thing, is when I see a student and they applied to 10 different things, and I'm like, oh, do they know what they want to do? If they applied to 3 things that are like somewhat related, that makes sense to me, right? You're interested in all 3, you're trying to increase your chances. But if you're applying to a bunch of different things, that kind of is like a signal to me that you're not really sure what you want to do. You're not really sure, like, what you may be the best fit at. And so I would caution that, but there's no harm in applying to the same thing at like 10 different companies, right? Because then that shows, like, you're just trying to cover all your bases, and you're trying to, like, increase your chances. There are some companies like Google and Facebook, I believe, that limit the amount of applications you can submit to like 3, but I know it's definitely a problem at Uber because a lot of the recruiters complain about it, that we don't have like a bar for like how much you can apply for. And so, but then in terms of once you get into the process, like once you develop that relationship with a recruiter, because often what happens is, if you guys apply for a job on my team and you make it past the screening process, which is, typically just reading your resume and then being moved on to the next stage, which is, it could be a resume. Sometimes there's also some screening questions, but typically for a software engineering role, which is our most abundant, it'd be the application screen. And then we would move you to our first technical interview, which is actually a live coding. So we don't just send you like an assessment like that you do by yourself, because a lot of the companies do that. You actually get to meet with a person, which I think is really great, that you get that person-to-person interaction for your first assessment. Is just to have, once you make that contact, I think just be in touch with your recruiter. I don't think there's too much, unless you're like, kind of emailing like all the time. Because more often than not, I feel like students have a tendency to not follow up, or they're kind of waiting for the recruiter to reach out because maybe they're scared, they're not sure, like, should I reach out? But honestly, if you would know like the volume, we get thousands and thousands of applications that we need to be able to process. And the workload of my team is really heavy. So even if you went to like so much as to reach out and go, hey, like, Espie, I'm just following up on my application, like, that actually helps me, because maybe like, I was about to like get back to you, and I just didn't, you caught me in the moment where I was about to, and that's a good signal. Or maybe for some reason, it can happen, like there was some kind of technical glitch. I mean, so always err on the side of like following up, and it can never look bad unless you're just being a pest and you're like emailing like your recruiter every day. So I would say like, yeah, definitely not be afraid to reach out if you have questions. I know sometimes it can also be hard to find the right contact, especially at a big company. So hopefully, you know, there is contact information, like if you applied through Handshake, you know, you can try LinkedIn. If it's like a specific messaging question, I will look at those, you know, and actually it happened some weeks ago. Somebody reached out to another recruiter, not in university recruiting, and she sent me the message. And so I was able to reach out to that student because he had a specific question about applying because he had applied in the past. So when in doubt, you know, you can definitely try messaging on LinkedIn if you feel like you can't get a hold of the recruiter via email.
I do appreciate you talking about
Yeah.
follow up because that is such a huge, sometimes our students feel a lot of anxiety around that. They're like, I
Mhm.
just don't know how to follow up or what I should say, or is it okay? So I do appreciate you saying, hey, it
Mhm.
could never hurt to do that.
Mhm.
Um, we do have another question. How much work experience is expected from a student applying to a new grad slash internship role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can really vary. I mean, again, like at a company like Uber, where we do have, you know, a ton of really great talent that comes through our door that are, you know, experienced students with, you know, just varying degrees of maybe internship experience. It can definitely set a high bar. I'm not going to lie about that. So typically, for a new grad, we would expect you to have an internship or project work. So if you're coming in and you don't have internship experience already, trying to go for a new grad role, meaning like an entry level role after you graduate from your senior year, it's going to definitely be challenging at a company like Uber. So, you know, definitely like if you've had that junior year internship, you know, that's definitely is going to make the difference in you getting, you know, looked at. If you are an intern applying, I mean, if you're applying for an internship, it's not a requirement that you have an internship, but I will say internships are very popular amongst college students. So I think definitely the students that are applying for an internship that already have an internship are definitely going to be at advantage. I know it's hard because I often would, you know, I'm sure you guys wonder, like, how can I get an internship not having an internship, right? You have to get that first internship. And so, you know, for the freshmen that the one, at least one freshman that I see on the, in the, here on the Zoom, definitely like you do have the time to get one. There's programs that are specifically geared to freshmen and sophomores because that's often a challenge, right? Like freshmen will say, but they only want juniors, right? But then like you get to your junior year, but I couldn't get an internship because I was a freshman, right? So it's kind of like, oh my God, it's so frustrating. I hear you. I hear you because I worked with all these students over the years, and these were definitely frustrations. But I will say there are those programs. So definitely, if you're a freshman or sophomore, seek those freshman sophomore programs out. And I know Bailey is your freshman sophomore counselor, so she probably has a somewhat of a lens about those and can give you those opportunities. You might even have, I know when I worked at Stanford and they still do, they had a specific event that was for like freshmen or sophomores. So it was like employers that were specifically like looking for freshmen or sophomores. We would have an event. So that's that. If that doesn't exist for you, because it can be a barrier, right? Like a lot of the internships are just for juniors, you may be able to seek out other opportunities that are not internships per se. So maybe there's some kind of technical research you can do during school during the school year or in the summer. So there's other ways to get experience that are not internships, right? So like, check in with faculty that you work for. There might be projects that are like related or even kind of like similar to what we might ask you to do at Uber. So, just be creative in terms of how you kind of package your experiences, because while internships are preferred, I know the road to getting that first internship is often challenging, but there's other ways to get around that. And that might just be things that are not internships, like projects and research on campus.
Thank you for mentioning that there are other opportunities. I think sometimes we get tunnel vision of we have to have internships, but there are other ways to get experience that's not necessarily titled an internship. So I really appreciate that. We are coming close to the end. So if you do have any questions, please get those in the chat. We will ask just a couple more here. We do have one taking us to like the beginning of an interview. But Espie, do you have any tips for students when they're asked the tell me about yourself question? It is a very daunting question of how much info they give or what they should say and not say. So do you have any feedback for that?
I guess I remember when I would do like mock interviews with students, they'd always be like, do you mean personal or professional? Or do you mean school? And I really think, it should be what you want it to be, think about like who your audience is. Like, what would you want them to know about who you are? Do you only want them to know about your personal life? Well, how would that come across? Like, it's good to talk about like yourself personally, but that's not giving them the full picture of who you are. So I really would encourage you to think about like, what would you want me as an employer at Uber, and pretend I was like the manager of the finance team. What would you want me to know about you? And like, what would you bring to the team? And that's probably some good questions to ask yourself in terms of how you're going to frame your response. So it really could be a combination of both. Like me personally, I would want to have like a good balance of like sharing a little bit of myself personally. And that doesn't mean like, that like all the stuff that I'm doing at my house per se, but maybe some hobbies I have, or if I read like a book recently. It really could be anything, but again, something that you feel comfortable sharing about yourself. That's maybe kind of cool and interesting. That's what I would say.
It also leaves like for a good way to help you stand out, and be unique. So thank you for answering that question. That is one that I know Deb and I get that is a little stressor for a lot of students. But is there anybody on the call who has any questions? We are getting ready we have room for one more if you all have any. But if not, I just want to say thank you so much, Espie, for doing this. We really, really appreciate it. And we appreciate all your feedback. And I know that a lot of our students are going to really take this and run with a lot of the things that you said and mentioned. And students, just remember Career Services is here. I know my shameless plug here all of the time, but please do come see us. We are here to help. Do not wait till you're seniors to come see us. I do recognize some of your names, so I know some of you have been in to see us. So please come in. We're happy to see you. I know I say come in, but virtually meet with us. We do phone, email, Zoom. So do reach out on Handshake or by calling our friend desk. But if there are no questions, let's see, I see a lot of thank yous. A lot of appreciation here, but if there are no questions, you feel free to go ahead and jump off. And thank you all, students, for your time. And Espie, thank you so much again.
Thanks, everybody. Great to meet everybody.
Thank you.